Welcome to Racetech TV. I'm William Kimberley here at Federation House to interview Chris Aylett, Chief Executive Officer of the Motorsport Industry Association. So Chris, what is the Motorsport Industry Association?
Motorsport Industry Association, William, was founded about 15 years ago. A collection of businessmen got together to sort out some issues that they had that were non-competitive with the FIA, that won't surprise you, legislative matters. And from that, it's grown into an organisation now of some 400 members with offices throughout the States. And in very simple terms, we're the world's only global trade association that welcomes people in the business of motorsport who are seeking to grow their businesses. And we help them in whatever way we can. So it's a community of businessmen and women who are trying to make money out of motorsport and look after the business side of motorsport.
Okay, so it's fair to say then, although you are a British organisation, you're not UK-centric. You do have overseas members.
It's a global trade association, which means that we attract members from all around the world. I mean, right now we have A123 Systems, which is Chinese, American. We have Bremson in Germany, Dallara in Italy, PRI in the USA, amongst many others. So it is truly an association of global companies trading in motorsport. We also have, obviously, some influence on all the activities that we do around the world. So, no, it's far from a UK-centric organisation, but it's only natural that the international headquarters should be here in Motorsport Valley, the world's largest business cluster, just as the film industry is essentially run from Hollywood.
Yeah. Do you think that other countries are keen to develop their own motorsport clusters, and is it a threat to the UK's Motorsport Valley?
It's very interesting. The Motorsport Valley cluster clearly has come together over the last 50 years, and it's really quite unique with what I call a tangled root system. You know, it's tied down to education, how you teach young people engineering, the fact that 7 out of the Formula One teams are based here. It's very difficult to see that being transported anywhere else around the world. There are, however, when I look at the USA, there are 3 mini clusters. There's the West Coast cluster, which has, as I've mentioned, off-road, Indianapolis, which has Midwest dirt track racing, drag racing, and Indy cars. And down in Charlotte, it has NASCAR. And in Europe, we have the sports car cluster in Germany. But collectively, no one has this strength in a small area, which is what clustering is about. All these companies, 3,500 companies, are all within a day's drive of one another. So do we see a threat from other countries? No. Do we encourage them to grow? Bollywood doesn't threaten Hollywood. It just, in fact, makes the world more interested in film. So it's good for us if other areas grow their own strengths.
Last year, the MIA initiated a technology roadmap. How's that coming along, and can you detect any trends yet?
The idea of having a motorsport technology roadmap that laid out the technologies of motorsport for the next 20 years was really tied up with the fact that we have a customer base, the automotive industry, that has done the same. And I was particularly interested to know whether their roadmap mirrored ours in any way and where they diverged or where they came together. If we can find those pinch points, we actually have a very large multi-billion-dollar customer group telling us what technologies they need, and we can see from our own roadmap when we are going to be ready to supply them. And in that sense, it's been very valuable because we've been welcomed by the automotive industry. We now sit on their own technology group, the Automotive Industry Technology Group, and we hear their plans for their technology, and then they refer to the MIA and say, will your supply group be able to meet those demands? So there's a real benefit occurring with this rather complicated technology roadmap, which is ever evolving. We're always open to discussion, always open to amending, but it's gained us the credibility that we needed with the automotive industry and the support that they have.
Okay. Can you tell us more about the MIA's various initiatives to other industries?
Right from the outset, I realised that the motorsport industry is full of great capability, but they weren't exploiting it to the full. And I'm talking about 15 years ago when I first got involved. That capability lies in some cases dormant because the focus is on motorsport. And you know that the pressure on winning or providing a winning solution is absolute. You can't take your eye off the ball. So there was a reticence, I think, amongst the industry to use this capability in any other direction than winning at motor racing. And they're very well rewarded for that. So why would you take your eye off it? However, the investors, I noticed that people weren't investing in these great companies. And of course, when you look at it, the investment story is rather dangerous, because your only advance that you can put to an investor is, well, we'll win, but there's a high probability you won't. So to improve the investment opportunities in motorsport, we decided to look into opportunities to use that capability. The first one we found was the efficient use of energy. This was back in 2001. Motorsport has at its heart the ability to know how to use energy efficiently. Well, the words have changed, and you might call it green, you might call it low carbon, but that capability is absolute throughout motorsport, and in the last decade has become hugely valuable. Having, if you like, exploited that asset or capability, we realized there were others. So we went into other industries and hunted on behalf of our members for those companies who might want to buy some capability off motorsport. And we found a ready welcome from the defence industry, the marine industry, and very recently the automotive industry, who, as you probably know through the Kyoto Agreement and all these other things, have signed on to prodigious changes in the delivery of emission-free transport within just a few years. Well, that ties up with the first statement I made. We are experts in the efficient use of energy. Now we have a client base in automotive that is desperate to try out new powertrains, and they have never been faced with so many powertrains options. And here is motorsport. So really it's taking our members and helping these predominantly small companies engage with these mega customers, and we've had great success.
Sure. So it's true to say that actually you are the enabler. You actually enable, on the whole, SMEs in the motorsport industry to meet buyers and people in other industries, let's say the defence, who they wouldn't really have a hope to meet otherwise. Would that be true to say?
Well, you've taken your magazine with us on some of our overseas trips, and although it's an entertaining phrase, we kick doors down on behalf of a whole sector, which an individual just can't get through. And somehow by arriving together in a gang, representing a whole group of customers, these major buyers have to talk to us. They may be able to ignore a single individual or give them the runaround, but they don't do that with the MIA. We do. Over the years, we've earned our spurs. People do trust us to bring good companies to meet them. And so from the chief executive president's level, we're able to have that dialogue and arrange for these guys to get in front of them. In the last year, we've run member-only events, taking our capability group into Nissan in the UK, into Jaguar Land Rover 3 times already, into Ford, and we have a list of other companies wanting us to take them in, including Lockheed Martin now and Airbus. So these larger companies are looking for a very unique, innovative supply base, and they're reading about our publicity and they're saying, well, actually this organisation can bring together a new supply chain. And I have to say the world is changing in engineering, where these major companies are, for a start, they're considering onshoring. They're bringing back to their home bases a lot of their production. But we uncovered something which may interest your audience. I discovered 2 terms that were being used a lot, TRL and MRL. I'd never heard of them before. They're terms from NASA, and any of your viewers need to look up the terms. The most important is technology readiness level, where the automotive industry has from numbers 1 to 3 is a kind of blue sky thinking. But from 4, 5, 6, and 7, this is how does technology move to pre-production prototypes? And then after that, the numbers are about getting it into manufacture. Well, certainly in this country, in Motorsport Valley, that particular valley of TRL 4, 5, 6, and 7, taking an idea, testing it, creating a prototype, and then having it ready for production. There were very few people in the supply chain who were ready to do that. They were ready to mass manufacture the product, but they weren't ready to help in that prototyping. That exactly identifies with the motorsport capability, because after all, we only ever make essentially prototypes.
And really, a lot of this springs from, as you said right at the start, that your identification of sustainability and harnessing energy, or the motorsport industry is very good at harnessing or understanding energy, and of course you have your annual conference, of course, and that has gone from strength to strength over the years, hasn't it?
Well, you attended the first one, I think, way back in, I think it was 2001, when it was definitely considered most odd, that there was a link between motorsport, low carbon, energy efficiency. But I do remember Ulrich Boretsky being at that conference. I remember Herb Fischel from America, and I remember NASA Max, the biofuel people going to race at Le Mans. So a few people had already identified that actually the low carbon future, the green future, was enormously valuable for motorsport. It doesn't mean we were on a crusade to change the world, but we understood, or some understood, there is going to be a capability required by mainstream automotive and other engineering companies, defence included, that will need to know more about this capability. So since then, every January, the day before the Autosport show, we've held the world's only low-carbon racing conference. It's grown to 250 people attending it. But again, we're the only country in the world that hosts such an event, and it's correct because it's right next to the innovative cluster of businesses that are Motorsport Valley. And it's really gone from strength to strength. And I have to say, we discovered energy efficiency value in defence because refuelling, when you're out in the field, you're under attack when you refuel. I didn't understand that. I didn't know that. So they say, can you extend the range of our military vehicles so that we're not endangering our troops by refueling so often? And of course, to get that, it's the same as automotive, is some lightweighting, some more efficiency in the engine units, and so on. So again, capability, if you like, linked to the efficient use of energy, goes out to the defence world.
The MIA has recently published a report that gives a very positive view of the state of the British motorsport industry. Why do you think that is when other parts of the UK manufacturing industry are so weak?
I always apologise to our international members of the MIA that I bang on about the UK success. But you know, if the Hollywood film industry, if Hollywood struggles, the rest of the world's film industry struggles. So if Motorsport Valley gets into difficulties or economic problems, then that's going to affect global motorsport. So for that I apologise. But the view that I had was taken on the UK Motorsport Valley. And compared it really across Europe with Germany, France and Italy being the major proponents. And you know from your own experience that other than Germany, which has this very strong brand presence which is close to motorsport, best example is Porsche obviously, but Mercedes and Audi have been very strong in motorsport. Those other nations in Europe have definitely faltered in terms of the volume of motorsport activity. We found in the UK that actually the nation here, the Motorsport Valley cluster, has just gone from strength to strength. Two or three things seem to be behind this. Motorsport companies are essentially lean. They don't run a heavyweight, large operation. They're small, lean, fast reacting. So when the economies changed, they were not really overburdened with overhead. And in fact, if you could go back only a few years, they used to lay off engineers, as you know, over the winter. So they were pretty lean going in. They don't advance long credit terms. As you know, it's a notorious fact in motorsport that you tend to pay on delivery, because if you blow the thing up the next day, there's no returns policy. So they didn't have a long extended credit. And this is talking millions of pounds, many millions of pounds. So they didn't go into it with a bad credit situation. They didn't go over it with heavy overheads. And as you now know, when we look back on it, the problems of the last few years affected certain areas or certain nations more than others. Well, if you're a global exporter from Motorsport Valley, 75% goes overseas, you'll find a good market somewhere. Geographically, you'll find a good country. You know, South America stayed strong, Australia stayed strong. They weren't all affected the same as USA and Europe. So one thing was that we found divergent countries. More importantly, we found that there were niches and segments within motorsport that still gained strongly from a lower level. Recently, I can say the most obvious one is off-road racing in the USA. So the USA economy might be struggling, but the segment that our companies supply, let's say off-road, the desert racing, that was booming. That was the few guys who'd still got some money left with the consumer downturn, were willing to spend between £500,000 and £1 million on cars that they're going to race across the desert. Naturally, they'll destroy them because that's bound to happen. And if you destroy them, you're going to buy some more bits. So as one market segment closes, so you find another one. Somewhere in that mix has meant that this particular cluster, Motorsport Valley cluster, has remained very positive.
What support does the MIA, and through you, your members, get from the British government, and does it recognise the value of the motorsport industry?
Well, the Motorsport Valley cluster will rely heavily on government support. Motorsport historically had very weak relationships with government going way back, and it was really just Formula One centric through Bernie Ecclestone and Tony Blair and so on. We took that up as one of our challenges, and we actually, first of all, benefited from Patricia Hewitt's finances, that she put £11 million into Motorsport Valley in the early 2000s. period. That lasted for 5 years. The new government we have in the UK didn't want to continue the Motorsport Development UK programme that she had. They wanted a more direct programme, and I'm pleased to say have chosen the MIA to be the representative of the industry to them. They've created a department within the Business of Innovation and Skills in London to look after motorsport. They've already invested in the national survey, which is currently ongoing in the UK. And that survey is feeding into an industrial strategy, long-term industrial strategy, which will be supported by many hundreds of millions of pounds linked with the automotive industry during this summer. As an indication, the aerospace industry have just received £2 billion for their strategy. So we're hoping in the summer to be able to announce some support from government. In addition to that, we were involved through government with writing the words of the tax credit scheme, R&D tax credit scheme, which benefits to many hundreds of millions of pounds, Britain's motorsport industry. The patent box, where anybody who is making income out of a patent gets only 10% corporation tax. And any day now, although I'm not officially allowed to tell anyone, there is about to be £1 million research competition for Britain's motorsport industry. So that's the kind of relationship we have. It's attracting some funding, but influencing policy.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you for joining us at Racetech TV.